Just when we thought testimony could not get more explosive than Cassie and Kid Cudi, we've even heard gasps on the stand.
Sean Diddy Combs' ex-girlfriend Cassie Ventura has been the star witness at his sex trafficking trial, and now Ventura's mother is taking the stand.
Bombshell testimony from Cassie Ventura's mother at the trial of Sean P. Diddy Combs today. She said Diddy threatened to release sex tapes featuring Cassie with male escorts.
The flashbulbs exploded along the Met Gala staircase, 1,000 lenses capturing Cassie Ventura in a mirror-bright gown. Yet, according to her sworn testimony, the real drama unfolded minutes later behind a locked bathroom door, where the pop star says the music industry's undisputed party king turned into her worst nightmare. Now that same king, Sean Diddy Combs, sits in a New York courtroom facing federal sex trafficking and racketeering charges. Billions in brand deals, a 3-decade career, and the reputations of everyone who helped him rise hang in the balance as jurors dissect whether glamour was only camouflage for coercion. Cassie was 19, wide-eyed and fresh off a viral Myspace single when Combs dangled a 10-album Bad Boy Records contract in 2006, an almost unheard-of tether for a newcomer. Industry veterans gasped at the length. Cassie signed, believing she'd found the mentor who could rocket her to Rihanna-level stardom. For a while, the fantasy played flawlessly. $50,000 couture at red carpet premieres, private jet selfies en route to Ibiza, and palace suite parties where Cristal flowed like soda. Tabloids dubbed them music's golden couple, and Cassie's Instagram shimmered with oceans, orchids, and endless designer tags. Behind the posts, though, every itinerary, dinner guest list, and camera angle allegedly required Combs' approval. Stylists now testify that even a brunch sundress had to clear Puff's text message veto, and friends recall the first warning signs. A chilly stare when Cassie laughed too brightly at another man's joke. A brusque hand on her elbow steering her off stage. In hindsight, those small tugs were the opening notes of a darker symphony. But backstage to those glittering entrances, something sinister was already tuning up its instruments. From the outside, Cassie's life looked scripted for a pop culture fairy tale, but backstage Combs allegedly rewrote every line for her. She told jurors he paid for her house, her cars, even her phone, and would seize any of them to punish the slightest resistance. Outfits, studio sessions, where she could eat, whom she could message. Nothing escaped his sign-off. Control was everything, she testified, framing the relationship less as romance and more as a one-way contract on her very identity. That need to dominate burst into open violence during an Escalade ride after a party in Manhattan. Bruised and half-conscious, she was hustled to a hotel and ordered not to show her injuries in public for a week. A chilling preview of the brutality still to come. When the rage cooled, a calculated rescue routine began. Cassie said Combs kept a private nurse on call for IV fluids, summoned chefs to prepare restorative meals, and paid masseuses to work out the trauma, then handed her pills that dulled the pain, and eventually hooked her on opioids. The message landed every time. He broke her, he fixed her, therefore she owed him. But the so-called healing only set the stage for something even darker. Nights where Cassie claims choice itself was stripped away and every boundary blurred. And that's when the private freak-offs began. Luxury pent suites that once hosted champagne toasts became, prosecutors say, arenas for Combs' so-called freak-offs. Multi-day marathons where Cassie and other women were expected to satisfy a revolving cast of paid partners, while the mogul barked orders from a sofa. Witnesses described baby oil-smeared floors, pole-dancing stilettos, and intravenous drips kept on standby when exhaustion or drugs toppled participants. One former assistant testified these ordeals sometimes stretched past the 72-hour mark, leaving rooms littered with pill bottles and recording gear. Among the hired faces was former adult performer Jonathan Oddie, who told investigators he joined roughly 15 sessions and later signed a non-disclosure deal for a reported $5 million after accusing Combs of treating him as a sex slave. Court filings track Oddie's sudden wealth and a divorce that coincided with the payout, bolstering prosecutors' claim that hush money helped keep the parties hidden for years. Cassie testified the cameras were never turned off. Combs allegedly stockpiled footage of every explicit act, reminding her that a single upload could ruin her family and career.
Cassie's mother told us she received a chilling email from her daughter 2 days before Christmas 2011, telling her that Diddy was planning to release the sex tapes as early as Christmas Day.
Jurors have already seen still frames of tripods, ring lights, and hard drives seized during DHS raids, while Cassie's texts beg him not to destroy her with leaks. Prosecutors argue those tapes aren't memorabilia. They're leverage, central to the racketeering count. The dread reached a breaking point in 2016, when after one marathon, Cassie says a hotel spat ended with a vase hurled at her head and shattered glass embedded in the wall, violence so flagrant that staff snapped photos now entered as evidence. The glittering facade was fracturing and the brutality would only escalate from there. The freak-offs were horrific enough, but Cassie told jurors the real terror struck when the music stopped. One night in May 2016, security cameras at Los Angeles' Intercontinental captured Combs chasing her down a hallway, hitting, kicking, then dragging her back by the hair. Cassie recalled a drunken argument that ended with Combs knocking her onto the floorboards, hurling slurs, and, she says, trying to stomp her face while two staffers watched in stunned silence. A silent movie of pure panic that prosecutors called the trial's linchpin. Cassie's injuries didn't fade with headlines. Stylist Deontay Nash recalled stitching tape pressed above her eyebrow after Combs allegedly smashed her into a bed frame, blood soaking the sheets before a bodyguard rushed her to a Beverly Hills plastic surgeon.
Deontay Nash is a stylist who worked with Cassie during the time she was with Combs, and he testified to that same story.
Photos of the gash, plus medical bills and doctor's notes, now sit in evidence binders marked Exhibit 47. Nash told the jury he kept quiet for years because nobody crosses puff and keeps a career.
Deontay also testified that Cassie went to a hotel to hide from Combs, but that Combs found her. Deontay went up to the room, told her that Combs was downstairs, and she said, "I'd rather go over the balcony." When asked what floor they were on, Deontay testified it wasn't the first floor.
When fists weren't enough, Cassie says, Combs weaponized humiliation. In 2018, after what she calls a forced makeup session that turned violent, he flooded her phone with late-night messages. "I'll ruin you if you walk." Those texts, 162 pages in all, were projected on the courtroom screen. Apologies laced with threats, hearts followed by, "Remember the tapes." Defense lawyers tried to dismiss them as lovers' quarrels. The time-stamped screenshots told a darker story, and still the circle around the mogul stayed silent. But the next witnesses, the insiders who claim they chauffeured, filmed, and even doctored the aftermath, were about to take the stand. Cassie's voice cracked the courtroom wide open, but it was the parade of insiders who made the walls quake. First came Kid Cudi, calm until he described waking to find his Hollywood Hills garage engulfed in flames weeks after Combs allegedly raged over Cassie texting him. He told jurors he never doubted who ordered the blast. Tabloids had once dismissed the story as gossip. Now it sits in the record as a snapshot of how far fear could travel through Combs' orbit. Then Mia, a former executive assistant testifying under a pseudonym, mapped the command chain.
Legal analyst Misty Maris was in court all week, including when alleged victim 4, who went by the pseudonym Mia, testified to the abuse she allegedly suffered at the hands of Combs.
She said there were times where she would work for 5 days straight without a break.
She recounted bodyguards ordered to collect women's phones at the door, a finance manager wiring six-figure bonuses marked production costs, and drivers instructed to circle hotels for days while Cassie begged to go home. Her calm broke only when she described cleaning up broken glass after the 2016 vase incident. Prosecutors stitched those stories to a broader tapestry of silence. Stylist Deontay Nash showed receipts for midnight flights booked on 10 minutes' notice, his signature stamped confidential. A Homeland Security agent followed, detailing the March 2024 raids that seized hard drives, opioids, and 2 unregistered firearms, evidence the government says proves a network, not a lone abuser. Even celebrities who once toasted Combs' parties found themselves named. A Forbes rundown listed Usher, Dawn Richard, and the late Prince among those who allegedly witnessed bruises or outbursts yet kept quiet, while The Sun tallied more than a dozen stars dragged into testimony or depositions. The unspoken question hung in the air. How many stayed mute to protect their own shine? One by one, the inner circle dominoes tipped, turning rumors into sworn facts and painting a picture of an empire built not just on beats and vodka brands, but on a culture of complicity. And as the jury absorbed every name, wire transfer, and burned-out luxury car, the trial's focus shifted from what happened to how so many let it happen, setting the stage for the legal avalanche still to come. The first public crack came on November 16, 2023, when Cassie filed a brutal 35-page civil complaint. 24 hours later, the case vanished behind a $20 million deal, but last week she told jurors she would hand every penny back for real freedom.
People saying, "This is how much money I spent on your daughter. I want this money back." The mother testified that she feared for her daughter's safety, so they took out this home equity loan, sent Sean Combs $20,000. He eventually gave the money back,
shredding any claim that the saga was just a shakedown. Federal agents moved next. March 26th. 2024 dawned with Homeland Security swarming Combs' Los Angeles and Miami estates, hauling out hard drives, opioids, and 2 unregistered handguns. Photos of gold-plated AR-style rifles flashed across news sites, and within hours, Diageo confirmed its liquor partnership was over, while Revolt TV announced Combs had quietly sold his shares. The empire's polished veneer was peeling in real time. The real thunderclap hit September 18, 2024. A 9-count federal indictment unsealed in Manhattan, accusing Combs of running a racketeering enterprise that trafficked women, laundered hush money, and torched evidence. Prosecutors called it a criminal brand strategy. He surrendered, posted a $10 million bond, and 4 media ventures collapsed within a week. Fast forward to May 12, 2025. Jury sworn, cameras banned, and daily headlines dripping from the courtroom. By day 14, a defense bid for mistrial was smacked down, and on day 15, the judge repeated the rebuke, warning no more delay tactics. Reporters asked whether a White House pardon might follow. Former President Trump said he'd look at the facts, a hint that turned the spectacle into a geopolitical sideshow. With each ruling, one truth grows clearer. It's no longer just Diddy on trial. Brands, executives, and an entire corner of pop culture now wait to learn whether the cost of silence will finally come due. In less than 2 years, Combs' empire has shed more marquee partners than a busted festival lineup. Diageo walked away from a 15-year Ciroc and DeLeon liquor juggernaut, calling the relationship untenable after back-to-back lawsuits and the DHS raids. Weeks later, he quietly sold his majority stake in Revolt, the hip-hop channel he once touted as black-owned, black-operated. Industry insiders read the fire sale as a scramble for cash ahead of civil payouts. But while brands flee, the music itself won't vanish so easily. Streaming data firm Luminate logged an 18% spike in Diddy plays the week his indictment unsealed, proof that scandal can boost spins even as radio programmers yank tracks from rotation. The Recording Academy has been evaluating whether to rescind past Grammy invitations, yet no platform has pulled his catalog outright, fueling Reddit wars over art versus artist, and a growing Change.org petition demanding removal. The wider industry feels the tremor. NPR now openly asks if 2025 is Me Too's true arrival for music, pointing to a pileup of lawsuits against multiple stars once thought untouchable. Executives whisper about Diddy clauses in new contracts. Morals language broad enough to yank equity the moment allegations surface. Managers urge artists to vet inner circle behavior, fearing they could be the next enabler hauled into court. Investment analysts warn that celebrity-driven brands are one viral thread away from collapse, citing the Diddy dilemma as a cautionary case study. So the jury's verdict, expected in early June, will land on more than one man's reputation. It will declare whether an entire ecosystem that profited from silence can still thrive in 2025's glare. And it pushes one last, uncomfortable question to every listener hitting play. If we keep dancing to the soundtrack, are we complicit too? For 2 dizzying weeks, the courtroom has felt like a collision of tabloid drama and federal crime thriller. Cassie's testimony exposed a maze of control. Kid Cudi's torched car and Mia's assault allegations mapped cruelty onto a timeline. Stylists, drivers, and accountants showed how hush money nursed the machine. Now the jury will step behind closed doors, and the next headline could be the one that drops Diddy's billion-dollar name into history's darkest footnotes. Yet when that verdict arrives, expected in early June, the echo will reach far past one defendant. Music lawyers are already drafting Diddy clauses to claw back equity at the first whiff of abuse, while major labels meet with crisis PR firms to wargame the next scandal. Brands, once drunk on celebrity glow, now calculate the half-life of outrage before signing the next sponsorship check. Even streaming listeners face a choice: keep the playlist bumping or hit skip and signal that the culture has shifted. Cassie's voice started this reckoning, but the microphone is effectively in our hands now. If the most photographed rooms in entertainment could hide a decade of fear, what stories are still waiting for the lights to turn on? Whether the jury says guilty or not, the silence that protected power has cracked. And what grows in that fracture depends on what all of us decide to hear next.